Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Paul Greenberg, and this is, of course, episode 12 of Talking Headless, which is, as you probably know, a PPN production. PPN is the digital broadcasting network that Brent Leary and I created about a year and a half ago, and this is the one of what will be 9 shows and soon 10 shows, really, by March. I'm doing something a little different today. As you know, it's been pretty much strictly an analyst type show where I would cover a single company and then we'd go to the segment, something I really. And I would always focus on a single company. So as you know, it's Salesforce, ServiceNow, et cetera, et cetera. And I've never had a guest. Well, I have made an exception because the guest is extraordinary. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Actually, I met this gentleman a long time ago when I first spoke at the Gartner conference in 2003, I think it was. But we became friendly because he actually sent me this text over when he was in the air on his way back to Minnesota in 2009, right after the Yankees had won the World Series. And he sent a comment, and it was also congratulatory. And we just ended up chatting, and I just realized, wow, this guy is awesome. And I literally, from that day on, I've just considered him a really dear friend. It's not like we talk all the time. We don't. He's a busy guy, and I'm an old guy. So, basically we talk when we can, but every time we talk, it's always a joy and a pleasure. This is Scott Nelson. Scott is a practice VP at Gartner, and he's been doing it for 24 years. Not only has he been doing this for 24 years, it's just wait till you hear the practices he actually runs. He runs, and we'll dig in on this. He'll run CRM, he runs CX, he runs ERP, he runs AI. He pretty much runs the known technology universe, right? And he has all the Gartner analysts in those practices to deal with. Now, if you're an AR person, you're going to want to hear the show because you're going to want to hear why and how Gartner is the behemoth it is, because people like Scott run it really well. Now, I do want to have one, I'll call it a disclaimer, I guess. Scott, while he has the mind of an analyst, and he really does, I mean, he's both as opinionated as one, and he has the same kind of incisive tendencies of an analyst. Also, he won't be talking about any individual companies. Let's put it this way: for him to do that, we basically have to have a Gartner attorney on the show with us to approve it before he says it, right? So it's understandably, he is not an analyst. He runs analyst practices. So the other thing about Scott, as you'll find out today, his interests don't stop with business and technology in his job. He's got an incredibly diverse range of interests, one of them which will become very apparent toward the end of the show. So with that, I want to bring on my buddy, Scott Nelson. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, Paul. Good to see you again.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I will say something. Every time I do see you, your beard gets a little more Nebuchadnezzar-like.
Yeah, it's part of the look. We got to have a little more intimidation. And if it's too clean cut, nobody respects you.
So, look, I mean, 24 years is a long time for anyone at any company, period. And you've been at Gartner, which means you've seen a significant part of its evolution and growth. And not only have you seen it, you've been one of the reasons for it.
Yeah, when I joined Gartner, we were doing about 125 million a year in revenue, and now we're over 4 billion. So we've grown quite a bit over the couple decades.
I'd say so. I mean, 4 billion is like an insane number for a firm that's primarily analyst and research firm. It's like, is there anybody even close to you?
Not anymore. We used to have several that were kind of neck and neck with us, but over the years, we've either they've fallen back or we've accelerated. So.
Well, look, I mean, so you obviously, given that you've been in the heart of business technology in particular over that last 24 years. And I think Did you originally start with CRM? Was that what you started with?
Well, actually, I started before CRM was even the term. I was a marketing analyst. I used to look at database marketing, and as was moving out of banking. I came from a banking background, so we had MCIS systems for years, and that's what I'd cut my teeth on. And I came to Gartner to do research in that area, and then it grew, and we started to bring in customer service, brought in sales, became CRM, and I was actually the first analyst in Gartner to look across the CRM landscape, whereas all the other analysts were in their drill down areas. So it's been a long ride.
So how did you become kind of running the program? I mean, how did that evolve from being an analyst into the more, let's call it the operational side of the whole thing?
Well, the change really was, as I said, because I was the one looking kind of pan CRM. I was looking at all the areas. So as we decided we wanted to consolidate the research and try to get some synergies between the different areas. One of the traps that you can easily fall into with analysts is that they're very deep in their respective areas. And so all they want to do is write about the area they know and take inquiries on the area they know. And it ends up with a lot of white spaces between the different areas. So because I was the only one who was looking across those different areas, I was asked to then, take over running all the groups to get better synergy between them. And one of the things we quickly did was stop talking about individual services, marketing, customer service, what have you, and start talking about CRM and CX, and really look across the whole thing and trying to develop our agendas such that we could eliminate a lot of those white spaces. To some degree, you never can eliminate them all because there's just too many, but you try to get the big ones out of the way so that clients can go, oh yeah, okay, I see the interplay between these. And that's what I've been trying to do now with, as you mentioned earlier, with my broader practice areas now, CRM, ERP, and generative AI, is looking at the same kind of white spaces between those and trying to find areas where we can do collaborative research to really push the agendas forward.
So so when you're looking at, let's say two ways. Way one is you're looking at ERP per se or Gen AI per se, and you're looking at for white space between there. And then part two, how do you find CRM, ERP, CRM, Gen AI, ERP, Gen AI, etc. What does it mean to even look for a white space between the practices or among the practices, I guess, and then within the individual practice? Is that do you take a different approach? Once you define something, what do you do with it?
Yeah, a lot of it is really trying to get the analysts to collaborate in discussions and talk about their areas. So, for example, this week right now, we have a number of our people at an offsite talking about the future of enterprise apps. What are they going to look like 5 years from now? And as they develop the vision of where that's going to go, that's going to naturally produce research that's going to come out of it, because somebody's got to write on these things. Otherwise, the offsite is useless. Sometimes it's a matter of just putting a natural interplay between them, telling the ERP analyst, for example, I need a certain amount of research from you on how generative AI is going to impact your area. Or you ask the generative AI people to talk about, gee, let's not just talk about what ChatGPT is doing, but let's talk about generative AI as the UI of the future, and how is that going to change the business flow for organizations. And if you've got good people, which we do, good analysts, you put that thought in front of them and they tend to go, oh, gee, that's interesting. Let me think about the ramifications of that. And they start talking to their clients, they start talking to the vendors, they start talking to academics on this, and they start to come up with really interesting ways that the pieces come together, often that can really surprise you. It's a classic quote that Neil Gaiman once said about writing. He said, write such that it scares you. And that's what good research should be. It should come out of that and go, oh, yeah, that's a little scary. That could really change things. If it's not scaring you a little bit, then we're not really saying anything that can't be picked up, on the internet in general.
You landed on one of my favorite authors too, Neil Gaiman.
Oh, Gaiman's great.
Oh yeah, I am a big fan of that guy. So, all right. So once so you've got this going on. In the meantime, you also have, I don't know how many analysts are within your practices in total, but let's just say a lot. And I don't know an analyst, whether they're institutional analysts, independent analysts, what I call boutique firm analysts, who isn't who isn't characterized by being, let's say, highly independent in their thinking and
Mhm.
in their fierceness in protection of their independence. And sometimes that comes out as a perfectly pleasant, wonderful person, and other times it comes out kind of a jerk.
Mhm.
But personalities being what they are. But how do you deal with that all day? I can't even imagine it, because you're really dealing with a very large group of those fierce, independent people.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's something we do value. Gartner makes a big emphasis on we are a disinterested third party. We're not trying to advocate any particular position that will help any solution that's out there. We're trying to explain the market. We're trying to help our clients be more successful than our non-clients, because we help them figure out the pitfalls that they're going to run into. So we want that independence, and we want the analysts to really stand up for their areas and the fact that they're experts, worldwide experts in these areas, and we want to know what they think. It's one of the things when we interview candidates, we tell them very pointedly, we want to know what you think. It may not be what we think, but we want to hear what you think. And we're going to challenge you on that, but we want to see you stand your ground and explain it to us.
Yeah,
So we need that independence. But part of it, too, is also laying down very strict and enforcing very strict ground rules on acceptable behavior within the analyst. So we talk a lot about tone. We talk about inflammatory content. We talk about the soft skills of dealing with other organizations, such that they can represent strongly what they think and what they believe, but not burn bridges with any of them. Now, sometimes we fail at that, but we'll circle back to those analysts and talk to them and try to make sure that they understand that. And I think in general, over the couple of decades I've been doing this, we've been able to get pretty effective behavior out of people. And in some cases, if they just won't behave with the provider community, we have had to let them go, because we'll say it doesn't matter how
sure.
smart you are, you're inflammatory, and we just cannot have inflammatory.
Well, yeah, I know the other thing that's really been interesting about the way Gartner, but I think the way most of the institutional analysts work, but Gartner is more specific this way, I think, is within each practice area, you have experts in an area who of an area of that practice, and who might overlap. Like, for example, and I'm using two of my favorite, they're both former now, but two of my favorite analysts of all time at Gartner, which were Michael Mose and Ed Thompson.
Mhm.
I would have no problem talking to either of them about CX. None.
Right.
But they have very different perspectives, or they
Mhm.
come from, no, I don't even know if their perspectives are different. It's probably wrong. They come from it from different places. Like Michael
Yeah.
came, historically on the customer engagement hub and customer service and so on. And Ed was broader CX environment experience. And I remember, um, again, to me, you guys had two of the greatest, aside from being the greatest analysts, among the greatest analysts I've ever seen, just two of my favorite people. And they knew their stuff. And the one thing I remember, especially when I saw over the years, of course, I've seen a lot of Gartner analysts in action, and it goes right to the heart of what you said, which is I hear them, what's the word? They hold their ground, right? They hold their ground.
Mhm. Mhm.
Then, but let me ask you this, and this is probably not the case, but I imagine it happens sometimes, is couldn't a vendor at times, let's say a client, actually, whether it's a technology vendor or whoever, it doesn't matter. Well, couldn't a client misinterpret that as stubborn, or not willing to listen, or something like that? How do you deal with that's not, ultimately that's not a nuance. It could lose you, the
No,
client, if they
no,
misinterpret
it's
an
true.
an analyst, like, holding firm. What
Yeah,
do you do? How
yeah,
do you
and
deal with
we've seen that. I mean, a lot of it has to do with you need to have good evidence and logic to back up your position.
that? Right.
So you're not just asserting a claim, but you can say, I believe this to be true because of boom, 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 boom. And over the years, we've become uh, very much have emphasized the whole evidence side of things, so that we can say, this is true because of this, because of this, because of this, because of this, so that the client really would have to ignore a lot of evidence if they didn't want to agree with the position.
Yep.
Uh, but we want them actually to be a bit stubborn. If the client can express a couple ideas and make them change their mind, that's a bit scary. That doesn't mean, it means they didn't really do a good job of forming a strong opinion. But the key is often in good communication, making sure that the client understands what we're really saying. So for example, we not only want to help clients understand vendor solutions that might be a good solution for what they're up against, but to help understand why and what the road signs are that they should be looking for that indicate that a particular solution is going to be better for them than other solutions. And sometimes that comes back as, well, Gartner told me to buy this vendor. And we say, no, we didn't tell you to buy a vendor. We told you what to look for and why some vendors, bunch of vendors, all very good solutions, but based on what you're looking for, these three fit very nicely. And these vendors over here are great solutions, but they don't line up well with what you're looking for. And we've seen that. We've had, for example, somebody say, well, I want an on-premise solution only. I won't consider a cloud solution. So we'll give them some solutions and why they might make sense. And we'll get a call back from various cloud vendors that will say, well, you told them not to buy from us. No, we help them find an on-premise solution because that's what they were looking for. Now, part of that is we may help them realize you may be looking for an on-premise solution for the wrong reasons. You might have false understanding of the value of some other solutions out there. But at the end of the day, if that's your requirement, then these vendors are going to line up well with what you're trying to do, and these over here are not. So they're stubborn, and then they're stubborn. And if you're stubborn simply for the sake of, I don't care what it is you want, I've got my position, and you're going to have to hear it, and that's it, that's going to cause trouble. If it's, okay, I understand, I'm actively listening, I hear what you're saying, let me explain my position on this and why that lines up well with what you're trying to do, then I think they'll accept the stubbornness as just well-informed and able to really help them to reach a good solution.
So what does a week look like in your life with all this? I can't even imagine, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a lot of fires, to be honest. It's a lot of, almost from the moment I hit the ground on Monday morning until the end of the day on Friday, there's going to be stuff that was unexpected. A lot of my week is consumed with talking to the managers and the individual analysts involved. Right now I'm in a round of meeting with every analyst, talking about what they're up to, talking about what's working, what's not working, what they're frustrated about. It's a matter of dealing with, there's escalations that come in all the time. Somebody's upset about either an inquiry that didn't go well, a note they didn't like, whatever. So it's, talking about those things, getting those smoothed over. It's about working with the, what we would call the key initiative leads, KILLs for short, the key initiative leads who are setting the agendas in these respective areas, working with them to say, okay, what's the story we're telling? Where are we going long-term? Where are the gaps that we need to fill? It's a lot of time with my management saying, I need more bodies. That's a constant conversation of, these are hot areas and we need more people to cover them because we're just getting too many inquiries. We aim, for example, that the average analyst is going to do about 500 to 600 inquiries a year. We have analysts doing over 1,000 to 1,200 coming in.
God.
And so it becomes, we need, that's two people. We need another person. And that's not even the writing trying to get that. That's just answering the questions that come from clients. So it's a matter of constantly making the business case of here's why we could use some more people. And Gartner is very careful about hiring. We don't want to overhire, and we don't want to hire into an area that's going to be passé in 3 months. So we have to constantly reevaluate that. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. And then it's hopefully rewarding and recognizing the people who are doing a really good job, making sure we keep elevating them to their peers, helping them to feel good about what they're doing, challenging them. Analysts are intellectually curious people. So it's putting things in front of them that get them going, that's interesting. I want to look into that more. And sometimes they're so lost in their day-to-day work that if you don't put those things in front of them, they just don't tend to see them because they're too busy with the day-to-day stuff. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff.
To be honest, I could never do what you do. I don't need, aside from the amount of patience it must require, which is like astounding level of patience. It's complicated. It's way too complicated for my brain.
It is. And that's why I've always felt that the best managers within Gartner are the people who have been analysts. And I've been asked sometimes people who have been interested in coming to Gartner and want to come in as a manager. I say, well, it's a bias I have, and I admit it. But if you haven't done the job of being an analyst, I think it's very difficult for you to figure out how to manage those analysts. So, once they kind of work through that and they understand the job and the day-to-day flow of information, it becomes much easier then to take a group of them and help move them forward and really remove the obstacles that are in their way for getting the job done.
I will tell you, I know just from my standpoint, I got a good look at as close to inner workings as I could back with, when Pascal was the events coordinator and stuff like that. So it was way back. And then what was the name of the guy who followed him?
Spain?
No.
Changed a lot, but Pascal's still around. He's still
He
doing a
is?
lot. Yeah, he's still doing a lot on the event side.
No kidding. I mean, he was my guy. He was like the guy who worked with me. And I was an independent analyst too. So I was pretty honored by the fact that Gartner said, hey, well, I could take it one of two ways. Gartner said, hey, you're absolutely no threat, so we'll bring you in anyway. Right. Right. So
hey, you're the godfather of this space. We have to get you up there on stage.
Yeah, you know what? I have to be honest with you. I think that's look, I appreciate it. And my parents said, never look a gift horse in the mouth. So I rolled with it. But that's a ridiculous title if you really think about it. There was never a and I'm not trying to be, it was the team. I'm not. People do have individual achievements that they do well with, but I was never how do I put this? There was a lot of people involved in making CRM, right? And I was one of many. I managed to have a big mouth. That was pretty much it. Right. So and again, got called it. It stuck. I appreciate it very much that people, kind of honored me with the honorific, and every now and then I play the card too when I get mad at somebody when it comes to really, really like horrible customer service. I actually had one time where I actually said at the end, in my world, I'm called the godfather of CRM. You don't want to make me mad.
Well, that's what I often have told people in customer service. I said, one of the best things about my job is I can extract personal vengeance on firms that cross me. So don't cross me, because otherwise I'll tell a story from stage and embarrass your company.
I mean, I've actually done that. But the thing is, I think one of the things with your practice is so you start with CRM. I presume ERP comes later.
As far as how I got into it?
I mean, as far as you getting added to your portfolio.
I came up from CRM, and then ERP was a natural extension because we want to look more broadly across the enterprise apps, the big enterprise apps. And between the two of them, they're massive spends for organizations. So it was logical. And then Gen AI, we actually started, I had a group that was emerging technologies in the enterprise app space. Well, obviously the emerging technology that took over everything else was Gen AI. So and we've been writing on Gen AI since 2017. We didn't necessarily call it that, but we've had since 2017. So we've been discussing a lot of the impact of this. And then, of course, ChatGPT made it take off in 2023. And we, the demand was so great. We had one of our guys did a webinar in April.
Okay.
I think it was on ChatGPT and what was going on. We had 15,000 people sign up. It broke the system.
Holy cow.
We couldn't get that many. But so it went from, a curiosity to suddenly every client we had wanted to talk about it. So now we devote, that group has really morphed into almost pure generative AI.
So so Gen AI is super hot. Obviously, it's a group you have, a group within your portfolio you have to pay a lot of attention to because it's clearly arguably the hottest area of all. CRM is extremely mature. ERP is even more mature. Meaning CRM, it's not that there isn't room for innovation, but there's not a ton of room for innovation in it because
the biggest problem, I think there's no innovation because there's poor strategy at most organizations. They just think, well, we're going to try to reduce costs or maybe we'll try to enhance revenue, but that's it. They're not really developing an effective strategy that says, okay, with this capability, what could we do different? How could we change our market space? And I think if more clients took that approach, we would see a lot more innovation in the space.
Actually, let me ask you how you guys dealt with this. And then I have one more question, then get on to our next segment after that. Okay. So when all of us started with CRM back in the day, we saw it kind of really big picture in the sense that we saw it from a strategy. It was customer strategy. It was
Mhm.
literally philosophy. It was conversation. It was uh, um, interaction. It was systems. It was technology. It was the whole thing.
Mhm.
But let's say those in the market said, "Nah, it's technology."
It's
Right,
technology.
and
Yep.
it's operational, right? It's become if
Yep.
somebody says, I mean, and you hear it when somebody says, well, my CRM is whatever
Yep.
the vendors is, which, I mean, I have to admit, I would, like you guys in the beginning, and me too in the beginning, I was sad that it went that way ultimately,
Mhm.
right? Because I thought it was bigger picture, and CX took over some of that. Because,
Yeah.
let's face it, CX, when CRM was at its early peak, there was no CX per se. There was a customer experience. Um, there were CEM companies out there, a few of them that were, early pioneers in that, but
Right.
they were a little bit what we now call CX. But now a lot of what we call CX is what we wanted CRM to be. Um,
True. True.
so how do you deal with that though when you plan for what you wanted it to be and it becomes something else, and all of a sudden how your analysts do things in that
Mhm.
category become different, because not
Yeah.
because you want it to be different, because you have no choice. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and you're exactly right. I mean, it's been a frustration we've had for a long time. We defined CRM as a business strategy, and a lot of clients just blew right past that and said, "No, it's a technology. I want
Yep,
to install CRM and I'm done."
exactly.
Um, a lot of it had to do, we put out years ago, and you mentioned Ed Thompson before. He was one of the key analysts on this. We put out the 8 building blocks of CRM, of which
I remember.
technology was one, and then we laid out a 5 generational model and talked about how most clients never can get past generation 2 because they can't get to generation 3 if they don't have a strategy on this. So we kept kind of preaching that message, finding clients who were receptive to the idea and realized that there was more to this than technology. And I did a lot of work on CRM failure rates in organization. And one of the things I pointed out was that in almost every case where CRM was viewed as a failure internally, it was because they'd relied solely on technology. They had not addressed any of the other aspects. And even at a minimum, if they hadn't addressed data and if they hadn't addressed process flow, the technology was just going to more quickly and more efficiently make their customers angry rather than fundamentally changing the way they do business. And so I'm telling clients all the time, you have a CRM system installed, it's like a rocket ship in your garage. You need to figure out there's a lot more to it than what you've got. But it's a matter of just continuing to preach that message, continuing to find case studies that show where organizations have broken through and have strategy. And part of it is having somebody in the organization who actually speaks for the customer, like a chief customer officer or somebody of that sort, who can elevate this out of the IT department.
Yes.
Because if it doesn't get elevated out of there, yeah, it's always going to be, I had vendor X in, we replaced it with vendor Y, didn't really make a difference. We've now put vendor Z in place, still it's about the same. Well, of course it's the same. You have no strategy driving it. So,
All right, so my final question before we move on to the next segment,
mhm.
which is Super Bowl pick.
It's a tough one. My youngest son was a huge Lions fan, and so
Yeah,
he was having the season of his life this year, and it was hard when they lost at the end of the at that game. So on the one hand, I'm probably picking more of the 49ers, but it's hard. I've got kind of got him staring at me, going, "How dare you pick them? They
yeah.
my Lions." But I think looking skill set and everything, I'd go with the 49ers.
Well, I'm not. Look, I'm a Giants fan, so I know what kind of season I had. But right now, my love of my life is the Knicks. I haven't watched the Knicks. I am not joking. Until the playoffs last year, I hadn't watched the Knicks since 1994. Right?
Wow.
They've been dysfunctional. They've been a horrible
Mhm.
team. They've been dysfunctional. The owner, he's still dysfunctional, but he actually put in a fantastic GM by accident. And this team now is spectacular. I mean, they're a team. I mean, we just lost two of our top players, and we won 8 straight. We're third in the East, but it's a team. I mean, there isn't a single player who doesn't step up, and I mean zero players who don't step up. And like, they'll bring a guy off the bench, he'll score 20. Bring another guy off the bench, he'll score 15. To bring another guy off the bench, he'll steal 5. Right? I mean, it's just like, and they're great guys. Right? So I bought the NBA league pass just to watch the Knicks this year. And the Giants.
That's something I've been watching. I'm a Bucks fan, and of course, you've got Giannis and others that are tremendous. But a lot of it has to do with the bench, and part of why we've gone through some coaching changes is that feeling that we weren't getting the cohesiveness of a team that we need. So we'll see what Doc Rivers can do with them.
Well, Doc Rivers, to his credit, is typically a really, really good coach. He really is. I mean, we'll see how I actually,
we'll see
of
how he
course,
does.
I really like him too. That's the other side. All right, so I'm going to do this different too. I have this segment that I do every year, and we've talked about it because I know your answers. I don't want to make believe I don't. Right, but it's called something I really, right, and it's dislike and like. But you're my guest, and I would love to hear and see, and I'd love people who are watching or who will be watching to see and hear something you really dislike and like. And dislike is always first, so we can end on a happy note.
Okay.
All right. So are you ready to play it?
I am.
All right. Whoa, I'm going out. Hold on. All right. Here, we'll try again. This is something I really. And all right, Scott. So something you really dislike. Tell me what it is.
I really dislike, and this is not a generated for your show. This has been a pet peeve of mine for a long time, is reality shows. I am so tired of those, and especially because they try to make you think this is actually what's happening all the time when it's heavily edited, and they put together just as little sound bites to make it seem one thing when it's another. Every time I see a new reality show come on, I want to turn the TV off.
I, by the way, agree with you in literally every single case of a reality show. I can't think of one that I can even tolerate, ranging from the ones that are inside houses to Survivor. I
think it's so funny they call them reality shows because there's so little reality to them. But
I know.
It's that's a pet peeve of mine.
All right, something you really like now.
What I really like is the whole genre of science fiction. And part of that is because I write science fiction screenplays. One of my publicity photos here is for one that I've got currently on the award circuit, and that's doing very well. It's actually been entered in the Cannes Film Festival.
Wow.
As a screenplay. So it's something I really enjoy doing. I grew up on Twilight Zone and Star Trek, and it's been an area that always has expanded my thinking, and I always have liked that it can do social commentary without being necessarily super obvious that it's doing social commentary and saying things that you couldn't say normally. And to my earlier answer, part of why I hate reality shows is there's no script. And for those of us who write scripts, we don't like shows that don't use scripts. So in general, sci-fi has been a defining aspect of who I am as a person and still is to this day.
I'm right there with you on sci-fi too, especially, and interestingly enough, the genre I love the most is time travel.
Yep, it's interesting. I write a lot of time travel stories. I'm always fascinated by it. And I had a producer picked up one of my screenplays the other day, and his comment was, I hate time travel stories until I read yours, because he said, in yours, time travel is a character. It's not this overarching part of the story. And so I always try to use it as a way to make the story more interesting.
Let's see, we're getting some late. For some reason, the comments came in very late. Right. I'm not sure why they came in so late, but they did. They just showed up. So listen, I read time travel. I read recently, I'm reading one called what is it called? The Quantum. Hold on. I am literally going to find out. See if you know this. The Quantum Curators. There's like,
I haven't read that
it's
one
a
yet. I'll have to
series.
read that.
It's a series. I mean,
Yeah.
do you know Jodie Taylor, who writes the St.
Yeah.
Mary's one? I love her
Yeah.
series just because the humor in it. I mean, occasionally the humor is a little bit forced, but generally the concept good. She obviously does her historical research really well.
Yep.
The characters are insanely clever and absolutely, all the years and the hundreds of pieces she's done and the dozen books or so she's written, they've all held up. All the characters have held up really well.
If you enjoy short stories
I do.
about time travel, pick up the Time Traveler's Almanac if you don't have it already. It's an excellent source of stories.
Okay. Well, I'd like to read some of yours too. Can we arrange that?
Sure. If you like reading, screenplays are very different, obviously, than reading short stories. But it's always happy to make them available to you.
All right. One last thing.
I can send you one in particular that I think you'll find really intriguing.
Tell us one last thing before we close. Tell us about Home for Aged Time Travelers.
Home for Aged Time Travelers was a story I actually came up with one day walking my dog. It just popped into my head out of the blue. And the idea is that time travel has been invented, of course, but it causes a complete disorientation for the practitioners over time. They lose track of what time they live in and what's real and what happened in the past and all that. So the story takes place in this home for aged time travelers where the government has put them to help rehabilitate them and live out their life. And it's a mockumentary, if you will, of somebody who's interviewing these people and showing just how confused they are by history and current events and putting it all together. And it was a lot of fun, and it's been very well received.
Congratulations on that too, by the way, and congratulations on the fact you've actually been a successful screenplay writer, which to me is more my that's my wannabe. So you are doing my literal wannabe. So I will be asking for advice as time goes on. So
okay, great.
Thank you so much for coming today, Scott. I mean, I don't think people often get an insight into both actually the history of all this, which you gave really well, and also what somebody who's not an analyst, although you came from that world, somebody who's not an analyst, how it all works. And I think that was really valuable. We'll be putting out some clips on this as time goes on over the next few days. Watch for them. There'll be a lot of views of that. And I hope someday you'll come back on the show.
No, always happy to come on your show or just chat with you about anything that's going on.
Well, thank you, sir. And I will see you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye. Well, that's it for today, folks. I am going to say goodbye. We'll see what happens in about a month, end of February. I will see you again soon, and have a good one. I've been mashed up, broken into two. I didn't know I was pretty till I took a look at you, and I'm rolling. Yeah, I'm still rolling. Baby, there ain't nothing I can lose, and I sure got the blues.
This has been a Players Productions Network digital broadcast.